Welcome to the Give for Grouse podcast, dedicated to giving the rough grouse a voice by promoting sound wildlife management, advocating for forest health, and championing all things conservation. Now let's get to the show with Cody Altizer and Eric Long. Mr. Altizer,
What's going on?
how are you today?
I am right as rain. How's Eric's world?
Eric's world, it's fine. It's fine. This weather up here, everybody always talks about the weather, but it's just up and down, up and down. Sunday, which, it was like this past weekend, it was like 70, 80 shorts and t-shirts. And then the Monday it was snowing. And this roller coaster March has just been horrible. No burning getting done. Mm-hmm. It's either too wet, too windy, because Ohio apparently is like Kansas now, where it blows 40 miles an hour. We got a big storm with hail coming as we speak. It's starting to get a little windy now as I look out. So but overall, man, it's been great. Been healing up pretty good. I was itching to come down to do some burning, but schedule is just crap and what have you. Yeah, womp. But other than that, you are getting some burning done.
A little bit here and there. Yeah, it's funny. I don't know if it's we've been burning for a few years now, but I feel like you said, I don't remember it always being this windy. And I don't know if it's always been like this or just because I'm paying attention to the wind more because I'm looking for burn days. But it's just, and I don't think it's been as windy down here as it has been for you. We've had some good burn days where I would have liked to have a little bit, there wasn't a puff of wind. We kind of had to do some strip head fires to move it along a little bit because it was moving so slow. But it feels like it's always windy.
Yeah. Yep. It's been, but that's the thing with burning. You have a short window, depending on where you're at. You got to take advantage of it. But if you don't get it done, I've been telling people, clients and just friends that are wanting, about burning, it's like, if you miss the window, there are growing season burns where it actually is almost more beneficial to your goals. So don't be afraid of that. Yeah, it takes some habitat out of the hunting aspect of things, but if you're trying to do some management, 1 year is not going to hurt you, and it actually might save you some money with herbicide and stuff because the fire's doing what it's could be doing for you financially. So, but no, man, it's the same old stuff. I'm looking forward to this guy that we're having on the show. You've been raving about him and stuff, but before we get into that, it's homework time. Cody.
Homework time. Homework item number 1. Our billboard campaign is ongoing, and we are so close.
So close.
We are less than 15. We need $1,500 more. We're over 86% of the way there. $8,600 we've raised of our $10,000 goal.
Yeah.
So close. Truly, help us finish this off.
Just cut the check, man. Just cut the check.
We've encouraged people to donate. At this point, we're asking you, not even ask, we're telling you, donate, please.
Yeah.
Donate. Will you donate?
As much as you're probably tired of hearing about it, we're tired of begging you, let's wrap this up.
The sooner we wrap this up, the sooner you get to stop hearing us talk about it at the beginning of every episode. Get into the
beg you for some more money about something else.
Yeah, exactly. We'll ask you for something else. But no, it is ongoing. The trajectory has always been up. We are incrementally, slowly moving towards our goal. I have no doubt we will hit it. But if you can donate, we encourage you to do so. HabitatVA.org is where you can make your donation. It is a tax-deductible donation. If that is any added incentive for you to donate, please, if you can, help us. Truly, $5, $10, $50, whatever you got. If you have it to spare, it would help us out, and we could get this thing funded. That is homework item number 1. I will let you do number 2.
Well, number 2 is, which pick one, right? If you leave a 5-star review on our
Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
Apple Podcasts and stuff, you will be sent and send us the screenshot of you doing so, and you will get a sticker. Yeah. And I guess, do they get a choice of sticker?
They do.
No? Yes. Sure do. Chip and Dale. Or
Chippendale and the nameless quail.
yeah,
Let us know which one you want: rough grouse and a
yeah,
chainsaw, or a bobwhite quail and a drip torch.
yeah. I'm
Let us
still
know what
saying
you
that
want.
we need somehow make these things scratch and sniff where it smells like drip torch and or two stroke.
That is $1 million
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah. But anyway, but no, that's the other homework species or homework that you have. And yeah, what
Yeah,
else is
today's
there?
guest is one we've mentioned it before. I don't even know what episode, which is bad because we haven't done that many. I've already forgotten how many we've done.
Yeah, right.
We're only a few into it, but you and I have had this contact sheet of people that we've wanted to have on, and today's guest is somebody that I wanted to have on. Before we started this thing, his name's Jesse Owen. He's a forester. He's the Golden-Winged Warbler forester, working for as part of the NRCS, and he's not just doing Golden-Winged Warbler timber harvest. He's a wildlife forester. How I know Jesse is he's marking timber for us currently, and he marked a lot of it last fall for the timber harvest that we have going on. And met Jesse, gosh, this time last year. I've known Jesse a year now. Had him out to the property to look at part of the property where we have some grouse, and then we were wrapping up an old equip NRCS contract, started a new one, and fast forward to this fall, he's marking the timber for our cut that's going on right now. And yeah, as you and I have talked about, just following a forester in the woods and asking and talking and walking and learning. That's what I do with Jesse. I follow him around and ask him questions. We talk about forestry. We talk about wildlife. We talk about things aside from that. I ask him questions that I genuinely am curious to learn about a tree species or wildlife or this or that. Sometimes I ask him questions I know the answer to just to hear a different perspective and, peek into somebody else's brain about it. But I have learned a ton from Jesse about wildlife and about forestry and how the two are married together. So all that to say, I've been looking forward to this episode for a long
Yeah.
time and having this conversation with him.
Yeah. I know you've talked highly about him and stuff like that. So yeah, I have obviously no comment until the end. I will let you know whether Jesse's good enough.
You'll get the stamp of approval. Yeah.
Like, you get to stretch stamp of approval. It's just I don't willy-nilly stamp it. You know what I mean? You got to earn it.
That's good.
All right, man. Look forward to getting him on.
Jesse Owen, how are you this afternoon, my friend?
Jesse Owen.
I'm doing well. Running around, checking with me, doing things. So
good. It is that time of year. You are running around pulling double duty, triple duty. I don't want to steal your thunder, but there's another little Jesse Owen running around now.
Yeah, we can call it double duty.
No pun intended.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, just had a baby a few weeks ago, so trying to manage that and also trying to get back into work here this week. So it's there's a lot going on, but we're hanging in there. So
good deal. Well, Jesse, we did it in an introduction, and I didn't want to go into too much detail, but yeah, Jesse has been marking timber for us on my family property, mainly last fall for a big timber cut we have going on. And it's with Equip and NRCS. So Jesse, I want to give you the floor to tell people who you are and what you do. Yeah, we'll get the party started.
Yeah. So I am a contractor with the NRCS, and I administer the Working Lands for Wildlife Golden-Winged Warbler program for the state of Virginia. And the program area for that is pretty much anywhere west of I-81 until you get down to around Withville, and then it goes down more into the Blue Ridge there, kind of near the tri-state border. And so pretty much the western third or quarter of Virginia is where the program area covers, but I spend about 80% of my time or 60% of my time in Highland, Bath, and Allegheny counties. So that's where the most Golden-Winged Warblers are, and that's also where we have the Covington paper mill, which helps with markets. And so that's where we spend most of our time. So, yeah. Yep. Gotcha. And I would be remiss to not mention that I work with my wife, Mariah, who is the Golden-Winged Warbler coordinator. So she helps put a lot of our plans into action and helps with a, a lot of the paperwork side of things. So,
So you guys make up this dream team. Scale of 1 to 10, honest question. How much do you enjoy working with your wife?
Oh my
I would,
God, Cody.
I, we are coming out swinging. No, but a lot of people ask the question. I'd say a 9 or a 10. Honestly, we do love it, and I don't know if she'll listen to this or not, but I would be honest, it is a 9 or a 10.
He's
We really,
he's just off screen going like with a
yeah,
gun or bat. Like it better be a 10, brother.
no, blink twice. No,
Yeah. Yeah. When is this supposed to be like this? It's when you're hurt.
no, but we really do enjoy it. You know, we both went to school together, had a lot of classes together. That's how we met, and
Oh,
so both working in both forestry and wildlife, which is kind of my background, and Mariah's background is forestry
yeah.
and landowner outreach and education. So it's a really good fit, and we're very blessed to have these jobs, and yeah, we really do enjoy it. So.
That's awesome.
I asked, I mean, you guys were both out. You've been out a bunch, Jesse. Like I said, Mark and Timber,
Mhm.
and Mariah came out once. So I knew the answer to the question. I asked it kind of half jokingly. And
Oh yeah.
seeing you two together, I mean, truly, it's a cool opportunity, for a husband. And if your spouse, you guys share similar interests and passions, and like you said, I think off the air or whatever, it's not for everybody, but for the right people, I think it's a pretty sweet opportunity.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
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 Cool. How
Yeah,
long
we're
have
not
you been
cramped up in
doing?
the office. Go
True.
ahead.
How long have you been in this position?
I've been in this position for a little over a year now. So, yeah, we've been basically through a whole application cycle and everything with the NRCS's yearly uh, system of finding new applicants and signing last year's contracts up. So we've kind of seen a little bit of how everything works at this point. But I would still say we're fairly new in this position.
Gotcha. So you're the Golden Winged Warbler Forester, but you're not exclusive to that species or those type of cuts. You're basically, that's your title, but you're a forester with a wildlife focus.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So interesting you should say that. I'll just start with a story. When I was going to apply for the job, he was like, okay, this is the Golden Winged Forester. All right, so I need to know everything about this bird. So I went and found all of the Golden Winged Warbler working group documents, and it's like a 150-page document of all the conservation concerns and all the BMPs, a lot of biology. And I went into the interview, and my now boss and another gentleman, they were asking me all of these very in-depth silviculture questions, which I had not prepared for. I have a degree in forestry, but I'd been working for a wildlife agency prior to this, so it was all rusty. But thankfully, I was able to dig really deep and answer the questions, I guess, well enough to land the job. And so, yeah, no, I am a forester. And but what we found is when you do quality forestry work and ensure that we're doing sound forestry practices, that a golden winged warbler, ruffed grouse, turkey, you name it, a lot of other species come along for the ride. Yep.
Right on. So
Yeah.
when you're as part of your position or your job, what type of I guess harvests are you writing prescriptions? Are you just marking timber? So like what's when you're out in the field, not so much the office work, but what's your what are some of your duties, responsibilities, out in the field being a
Yeah.
forester?
Yeah. So I'm really fortunate. It is a sweet gig that I can just go from start to finish. So say landowner's interested, they heard about it from a neighbor or friend. A landowner told me, say they're interested after talking with me, and I can talk about the forestry work that we do. If they're interested, we sign them up, get an application in, and then I come back out to the property and I collect forestry data. So looking at the overstory and understory, depending on the client's goals, sometimes I will collect some very basic like merchantability information, but primarily focused on the the density and diameters of the trees, and then the regeneration is a really large focus. So I would collect the data, and then I enter that into some software that the Forest Service uses, and we also use, or Forest Service developed, and then create a plan for the landowner based on that data and the landowner's goals. Write the plan, present it to the landowner, and if they want to go through with it, then we can turn that into an NRCS contract, which is where Mariah mainly comes in to handle a lot of translating the technical side of things that I do into an NRCS contract that I would assume you're familiar with. That can be a little hard to read.
Yeah.
And then if the project goes through, then I am able to go out, flag the boundaries if it's a timber harvest, and mark the trees, mark the boundaries, and from there, that's pretty much where my work ends. So I can do pretty much everything but spraying the herbicide and but cutting the trees. But
Mm.
for a lot of my work, as far as things that I prescribe, we do some work in old fields. We find that that's a really good place for creating golden wing habitat. So that's one of our ways we can do it. But in the forest, we're generally working towards a shelter wood sequence of harvest if we're working in an oak system. So that is getting oak seedlings established and then opening up the canopy incrementally, usually through a non-commercial harvest and then two commercial harvests typically to get to the structure that the golden winged warbler likes, which is basically a clear cut with a few residual trees.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. For the layman person that just getting into this, what makes golden wing warbler habitat? That's what you are. That's what you and your wife are.
Yeah.
Like when you go to like Cody's property, I mean, what is golden wing warbler habitat versus just a normal type of cut? Explain that
Absolutely.
in layman's terms.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, golden winged warblers, they use pretty, to put it, I don't think it's a technical term, but they use all of the layers of vegetation in different ways. So they use everything from big overstory oak trees, shrubs, forbs, and brambles like blackberry, and then they'll also use the herbaceous component. So it's more or less uh, an old field or a relatively young forest. So, say a timber harvest or some kind of disturbance 4 or 5 years later. But really, the only thing that makes it special is that we really do need the perch trees, which would be a few residual oak trees or poplar trees. Depending on the site, we need a few residual trees left behind to serve as the perches. That's something that the research has shown is a very important aspect for them.
Mm.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So I guess if you're doing grouse management and stuff, usually, clear to table, you don't have those perch trees because of raptors and et cetera. But I guess if you're doing that, I mean, in the whole scheme of things, when a habitat's a habitat and it's rocking and rolling, having some perch trees is,
Yeah.
it is what it is. But
Yeah. No, the perch trees, I'm not saying that they couldn't house raptors and cause a problem for grouse. But I've talked to many, many landowners who have gone through the program ahead of me, like have done programs in the past, and 5 or 6 years later, they have started hearing a lot of grouse after the work. So it might not be the ideal for ruffed grouse, but it would certainly be excellent ruffed grouse habitat in
yeah,
addition. So, and then you would be getting some benefit of mast, which, if that's even that important or not for ruffed grouse, but you would have mast for other species like deer and that sort of thing.
yeah.
I got a question for you, Jesse. I don't know if you and I have talked about this, and you kind of answered it right there. But if you could paint us a word picture with a grouse specific focus for what picture perfect rough grouse habitat might look like, keeping in mind the value of those leaf trees. Because it's funny you mentioned, how golden winged warblers use like all layers of the forest, and I was thinking about this. A couple days ago, we have a forestry student who's been out on our property to help develop a management plan for one of his classes. And, I'm in his ear about grouse, and he's curious about our property's objectives and goals. And I'm like, grouse first. So he's done a phenomenal job asking me a lot of questions about what I know and our goals and how we want to manage the timber, this, that, and the other. But there's a graphic out there that I'm positive both of you guys have seen. It's a visual graphic that charts succession, immediately following disturbance. So prescribed fire, clear cut, and it's, year 0 to 50, 75, or, a climax community. And, for grouse, he was asking me what type of habitat they need, or does there need to be overstory trees, dominant story trees, mid-story, this, that, and the other. And I told him that if he can visualize that graphic, from 0 to 50, if you can condense it all into one, that's kind of would make ideal grouse habitat, because they need, they need an herbaceous understory. They need to be able to navigate. They need young forest. They need a mid-story and, shrubs and trees. All that to say, I think, and it's so site dependent. I love to pick people's brains about it. And I think there's a lot of value in those overstory trees. For grouse, if they're a hard or soft mass, dropping food into high stem density, thick cover, I think there's a lot of utility and value for grouse in that type of forest structure. Because I think the argument that Eric mentioned, if you leave residuals in a shelter wood or a heavy cut, you are leaving trees for a raptor perch, but realistically, grouse aren't going to use that area consistently until it's 4 or 5 years old at the earliest, 5, 6, 7 years old. Realistic. So by then, if an owl or a hawk pulls one out of there, like, they've kind of earned it. But the value from, if it's a black gum dropping droops or a oak dropping acorns into that high stem density, rough grouse, young forest, thick cover, I think it has a lot of utility. So anyway, I just kind of rambled there, try to give you a minute to get your thoughts together, but paint us a word picture, if you could, of what a ideal rough grouse habitat might look like for us here in Virginia or Appalachia.
Yeah, no. So I will, we can include the Golden Winged Warbler leaf trees in it as well. So that's kind of a smaller detail, but really it is a mixture of those age classes. You mentioned the different stages of vegetation that they need. So you have the drumming or escape cover, as some places call it. You have the brooding habitat that they need during the summer and spring months. And then there's the nesting habitat, which, from everything I've read and that sort of thing, it seems to be relatively mature timber. So having, say it's a 100-acre property, or I'd like a 200-acre property better. So say it's a 200-acre property. Y'all had a guest on a few weeks ago who mentioned the Gordon Guyon, or I'm butchering his last name, but the Gordon Guyon kind of model of cutting about 10% at a time over a 100-year rotation, roughly. I think that you could certainly condense that down to 80 years on most sites, but cutting about 10 to 20% or 10 to 15% every year and doing preparatory treatments adjacent to that would give you the escape cover and drumming cover and the overstory removals, or clear cuts, as you might say, in the shelterwood areas, or the areas that have received a shelterwood preparatory cut. That gets the light just high enough for oak seedlings to grow, and it also allows about 15 to 30% of light for some shade tolerant forbs to grow. So that, to me, it sounds like good brooding cover. In places that I've seen where mid-story removals have been done, it does sort of fit the bill. Certainly for turkey brooding cover as well. 3 feet tall umbrella species throughout a forest seems like a excellent brooding cover to me. And so having those interspersed across a property would be my ideal if I was setting a property up for it. But of course, the landowner has to have markets to get it done. But most importantly, a plan and patience. You really have to have a plan, because if we just say, all right, I just want to go cut, then you might cut too much, or you might not even cut enough. And then having that spaced out and timed at the right at the right intervals is really important to optimize that. And really the only difference that I can think for a golden winged warbler prescription versus the rough grouse would be you may or may not leave any leaf trees in that matrix. So when I'm setting up properties with the golden winged warbler in mind, it's pretty much everything that I told you. You know, we're trying to do the shelterwood harvest sequence, which is a 2 or 3 step sequence that ends in something that would look like a clear cut to anybody that goes by. But it's just getting the oak seedlings established so that we have a financially and ecologically valuable forest in the future. So it takes patience and it takes a lot of planning and a good inventory. But yeah, that's what I would do. As far as getting started with it, starting in an area that might have poplar or somewhere that's already has a lot of maple or somewhere like that to life raft or lifeboat to quote Pennsylvania Game and Fish uh, article that I have been looking at. That would be a good place to get started while you're getting your oaks developed so that they can sustain a harvest.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. You answered
Okay.
that
Yeah.
perfectly.
Yeah.
Well done. The
Yeah.
end. We're done.
Yeah. Let me ruin it with a question.
Let's do it.
No, I'm so fascinated that this bird, this golden winged warbler, I know nothing really about it other
Yeah.
than the possibilities, and I'll just be blunt, the possibility using this bird to achieve many things other than obviously given the species habitat. But what is it about this bird that look what, I mean, it created two positions, you and your wife. I mean, what is it about this bird? And I don't mean to jump around like you're on the stretch there with Cody's question and answer, but I keep going back, like, what is it about this bird that there's funding for doing this type of cuts?
No, that's an excellent question. So the bird, as far as I can recall, it's declined by about 60% in the last 50 years.
Really?
So it is almost on the endangered species list, and the purpose of programs like this are to keep it off of the endangered species list. But another thing about it is that it is an umbrella species, so that like when we're conserving land for the golden-winged warbler, we're also, or I would don't say conserving necessarily, but creating it, developing it for the golden-winged warbler. We're also developing it for ruffed grouse, deer, turkey, non-game bird species like chestnut-sided warbler, Baltimore Oriole, all these crazy things, and not to mention the insects and plants that I don't know all that much about. But at my last job, we had a property that it was a large amount of relatively high elevation old fields, and it was a place where I got to do a little bit of work for the golden winged warbler, cutting trees out of this old field to maintain it. And when you'd go up there hunting, there were more rough grouse on that property than anywhere else
Hmm.
Wow.
that we managed. And there would be hunters up there all the time for the rough grouse hunting a lot of those edges. I hunted there a time or two. I heard several the one trip I was up there. So lot of deer, fair amount of turkey. So that's just an anecdote, but good golden winged warbler habitat definitely benefits a lot of other things.
It's amazing the birding community. You have to give that a lot of credit. Like someone was out there, a birder, I'm just assuming, and says, "Wait a minute, this bird, I'm not seeing it as much." I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
that's the thing. It's like you can't poo-poo, butterflies and bees. It's not
Mm-mm.
manly and blah blah blah. And then birding, everybody has this image. Let's be honest, of a birder, and look at the role that they played into some incredible habitat creation by
Absolutely.
noticing somebody caring and seeing that there's a problem. I mean, that's just mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I wasn't a hunter, I would definitely be a birder. I mean, when I'm hunting anything, I always have a set of binoculars or eBird out or Merlin out or something like that. I mean, even when I was a kid, my dad is not a professionally trained birder or anything, but he just liked them. He kind of self-taught. So I've had an interest in the non-game stuff my whole life as well. But it's always while I'm hunting or fishing or doing anything else outside. So no, it adds a lot of richness if you know the non-game birds that are out there.
Yeah, I remember in college, ornithology, God, you had to know them by the song as well as
The little
sight.
stuffed, yeah, the stuffed skins or what are those called?
Yeah, yeah, we had this
Yeah.
professor would go, hey, you'd hear a bird, and you go, one, you just test time, like one, and then you would see the number two, and he would listen, that's three, and you're going, what was one? I don't hear one no more. You're just
Yeah.
putting turkey bolter down for everything. Screw it. And everybody's copying off one another. You're like, what was three? It's like, I mean, yeah, sitting around, I'm dating myself, but sitting around with headphones and a Walkman, and you're sitting there listening to bird calls. That was we'd have birding parties where everyone's drinking beer and listening to bird calls.
Oh, sounds like fun.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So that's funny. Jesse, I asked you this one time, maybe pivot a little bit. I asked you this one time when you were out on our place. We advocate for forest management and cutting and aggressive or active forest management, whether that is aggressive cutting or prescribed fire. And obviously that is what's lacking on the landscape, but there is a lot of utility and value for some wildlife in mature closed canopy forests or mature woodland. I want to give you the opportunity to advocate for those habitats and what wildlife might need to use those habitats. Because again, want to make sure we tell both sides of
Yeah.
the story. As part of this podcast, I don't want. I mean, we're, as I'm sure you're aware, advocating for aggressive forest management, but
Hmm.
we can't clear cut all of it, nor do we want to. There's as you kind of mentioned, that Gillian cut, it's, I think, a perfect image. Mike Dye we had on, he called it a quail. What did he call it? Do you remember, Eric?
Oh, yeah. What the
Maybe a
hell?
quilt.
A quail quilt. Yes,
No.
exactly that.
Yes.
That
Yeah, I've heard that term.
patchwork.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
and as part of that patchwork is mature forest. So anyway, I asked you one time about what bird species, I don't know if you remember, used mature woodlands, but I want to give you the opportunity to, advocate or, use this opportunity to describe the value of a mature woodland for wildlife.
Yeah. So as far as bird species, I think the species that I pulled out of thin air was the brown creeper. So that's a
Mm-hmm.
species that you see a lot in mature hardwood forest. But I think probably one of the most common ones that gets thrown out for a mature forest or relatively undisturbed forest species would be the ovenbird. So that's a species that it makes its living in a lot of bare leaves. I believe it makes a little nest on the ground out of those leaves, and uh, that's sort of the habitat that it prefers. But I would say that even more than completely undisturbed forest, just based on what little bit we know of the ecological history of like the East, would be that maybe relatively uh, closed canopy woodland with maybe 20 to 30% of sunlight hitting the forest floor. Historically, that might have been maintained by wildfires or fires lit by Native Americans and that sort of thing. Those are some habitats or some forest types that are pretty strongly lacking on the landscape where it's maybe a fairly lush understory, herbaceous understory, relatively open forest. And you see a lot of really neat species. I'm thinking about like a red-headed woodpecker and those sorts of forests. So that's something that I would advocate for as well is uh, maintenance of your forest, keeping the density correct for a lot of these species. And a lot of that's just maintenance with things like non-commercial treatments or prescribed fire Fox squirrels would use those sorts of areas a lot as well. So,
Gotcha. I've been up on. Have you ever been to the Warm Springs Mountain Preserve, the Nature Conservancy property?
no, but I've heard a lot about it.
I've been going up there lately, listening for grouse, trying to find some to film, and it is. I recommend it. It is just
Okay.
beautiful. You would love it. But there's and I'm glad you mentioned like a 20-30% open canopy because I think that's not a lot, but it's a lot more than closed canopy.
Yeah.
And there's a part of the property up there, and I've been up. I see grouse in this part of the property every single time, and there's a lot of trees, a lot of mature trees, and I would love to know what percent of the canopy is open because it's not a lot. I mean, it's probably like you said, 20-30%. A lot of mature oak trees, not timber, straight pretty timber oak
Hmm.
trees, but a lot of scrubby chestnut oaks, some white oaks, but there's not a lot. If you were to look at it, you wouldn't think it's rough grouse habitat. But in the understory, there's a lot of not. Can't even say not a lot. I mean, there's a mid-story shrub component that's noticeable, mainly witch hazel, and then some blackberry, not blackberry thickets. Just individual stems.
Hmm.
But you can walk through it with no problem. But I see grouse there all the time. And really no question, to this rambling, but it kind of highlights the importance and the utility for even a specialist species like grouse, because we have on this podcast said many times, the thicker the better, high stem density, this, that, and the other, which is absolutely part of it. But it speaks to the adaptability of the grouse to use that woodland type of setting, which it's not closed canopy, but there's not a whole lot of sun getting to it.
Yeah.
But grouse are making house and home in there. And then again, it's another example to say, hey, we don't need to, we don't have to clear cut every acre, leaving a lot of these trees. And like you said, you have to manage it. You have to be active in it, whether that's invasives or ensure that there's always sunlight getting to the forest floor. But, I'm glad to have you on here now because up until now, I mean, we're clear cut or aggressive shelter what prescribed fire, aggressive forest management, but wanted to make sure that we tell the whole story. And again, using
Yeah.
grouse as an example, if they can find value in a woodland setting where 20-30% open canopy, then that's going to work for a lot of wildlife species.
Oh, yeah. Have you been seeing them adjacent to maybe a clear-cut looking area of more of our typical grouse habitat when you've seen them on Warm Springs Mountain? Or
I tell you, I've seen them everywhere. Honestly, there's some beautiful, by every definition of the phrase, I believe, young forest, like we were talking
oh yeah,
about earlier, where every layer of the forest has vegetation, or there's enough sun, obviously, that there's forbs and space on the forest floor for grouse to navigate. There's a heavy shrub component. There's mid-story saplings and shrubs, and then there's overstory. I mean, where I tried to film a grouse this morning, it's not a clear cut, but it's a clear cut type of response. I mean, thousands of mainly a lot of oak, a lot of witch hazel again, I mean, about as big as my thumb,
Mhm.
saplings and seedlings that I can barely walk through. So it's a beautiful piece of property that I think people could use as a reference to what does grouse habitat look like, because it's got that kind of mature woodland setting. It's got young forest. It's got some that's honestly probably too thick for grouse because their return interval, they burn a lot of it. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm sure grouse use it, but it's you and I, we could not walk through it. I mean, a grouse obviously probably could, but they couldn't fly away. It's that
Right.
so darn thick. But
Wow.
it's got all of those age classes are checked across, of course, thousands of acres. But
Yeah.
it's phenomenal. You and Mariah,
Yeah.
you guys got to go up there and just
Yeah.
walk around.
It's probably an hour or so from me, so we would have to like do it while we're out in that area. But no, I've you're not the only person I've heard recommend it, so we need to put that on our short list,
Hmm.
for sure. But
Mhm.
yeah, going back to what you were saying, uh, I think a lot of the point that I'm just trying to make is that we never want a bottleneck of not having that 5 to 20 or 25 year age class. So that's why Like I am all about clear cuts when appropriate. I'm all about just the right thing for the right time at the forest.
Mm,
So if we clear cut all of our forest, that might be great now, but there's going to be a period of time when it's too open for the rough grouse, and then it doesn't have the right habitat for a certain period of time. So just making sure that there's always some available um, in the long term would be, in my view, a little bit more beneficial than a whole lot at one given point in time.
Yeah.
man, that's pretty well said. You have to remember that, Cody. Remember that. That's a good thing to take out. That was so well said. That's probably the best that somebody's ever even talked about it before. Yeah, I like that. Um, Going back, of course, I gotta throw a stick in the spoke. Jumping back to this bird.
So,
Um, I just Are you guys going back? Is there anything like, okay, you're doing this work. Are you seeing the results? I mean, of course you're going to say yes, but are you seeing the results of the habitat? Is somebody going in there looking and evaluating? Are we seeing the reaction of the bird? Is it too late for the bird to respond to the habitat that's being created? Are we just putting, using this bird to do projects? I mean, what are we doing? Or if they are not responding like they should or are, I mean, is the techniques even wrong? I mean, are we missing something?
so
That's two,
that
Cody.
it,
I got two
yeah,
stars.
come on. Yeah, come on, Cody. You got to
Cody's like,
step
what's your
up.
favorite color?
Great question. No. So, so as far as that goes, there are people with the Working Lands for Wildlife under that umbrella who are doing research on that. I know that there was a crew adjacent to Mariah and myself, but through a NC State, I believe,
Mm,
that were collecting data on like Golden Winged Warbler habitat use, so putting out ARUs, sound recorders,
mm,
and also collecting forest vegetation data following these cuts. So looking at the regeneration, understory response, all that sort of thing.
yeah.
Um, I haven't heard the results of that, but specifically for the Working Lands for Wildlife, we are seeing or we are doing research on that. Not that I'm doing it per
No, no,
se,
I know what you meant.
but yeah, no, we are doing it. I also know that there's a few other universities, or at least one other university in Virginia that's doing uh, pretty significant golden wing warbler monitoring. And so some of the things that we found is that a lot of folks who may be familiar with the program up to really the year before I got here, it was pretty much a clear cut uh, incentive program, but just leave a few reserve trees, uh, you know, a lot of times very small reserve trees. And what the last round of data that was collected found was that it really wasn't giving us the response for the golden wing warbler that we were looking for. So in those forested settings and not getting a lot of use. So what the program is doing now in Virginia is following more of the lines of how Pennsylvania is doing it or has been doing it, where we're pretty much managing for oaks in most places where there's an oak forest, which is the shelterwood model, and that gets a better vegetation response in general than just going to a clear cut, which doesn't regenerate the species that we want. A pretty key piece of that for the golden winged warbler in specific is they eat these little leaf rolling caterpillars or inchworms, walking through the forest, and you have the little inchworms fall down in your face through
Mm-hmm.
that little thread.
Yeah.
So that is what the golden winged warbler eats. And oak trees, specifically white oak, hosts over 200 species of those caterpillars.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
when I talk to people, most of the time I'm talking more about an oak tree than the golden winged warbler, but it's really critical to have those oaks because of the
Yeah.
insects that feed off of the oaks compared to things like poplar and maple and other things like that that just don't host the insect numbers. So I'm not thinking about mast per se
Mhm.
for our program, even though almost every landowner, their primary interest is usually deer or sometimes turkey or grouse as well. So those oak trees certainly do help with the mast production side of things.
Yeah, there's two things. It's when Cody and I were doing Deer Hunter Project, we had this wildlife series called Wildlife Our Way of Life, right? Is that what it was called? Way of Life.
Well, I don't
Yeah,
know.
Way
It
of
was
Life
something
series.
like that. Yeah, way of
Yeah,
life.
but I looked up this guy. He was a professor from University of, I think, Delaware or Maryland. Darn it, Doctor. But anyway, he had the life cycle of an oak, the book, and he talked about the life that an oak tree offers and what it does through its whole life cycle, 365 as well. And it was amazing, the oaks, how valuable they are. Yeah, and the other thing is when we need to put those ARUs on Cody's to see if the warbler, and we'll just get the phone, we'll just
Oh,
have the
Oh
sound.
yeah,
you record.
buzz buzz.
My
Yeah,
God,
yeah.
you should see all the warblers and all that.
Oh yeah, that would be fun. That would be funny.
It's like, God, we've never seen anything like
This is a hot spot.
it.
Oh yeah, that would be
Make
funny.
sure you download the right one though. That's
Yeah,
you and I will download
it's
something
like
from
Eurasian pigeon.
California. Yeah, Eurasian collared dove.
Yeah, y'all have California condors on your property or something like that. Yeah.
Like, damn it. Oh, if you don't laugh, you cry. Oh,
funny.
shoot.
That's So we've mentioned the the leaf trees, Jesse, and I know we're not doing a golden wing project on our property, but it's kind of a golden wing cut.
Very similar.
For per acre, so people, because we've mentioned leaf trees, residual trees, per acre, how many of those trees are you leaving in the most aggressive cut? Well, two sides. When you're cutting it the most aggressively, what's the minimum trees you're leaving per acre as part of a golden wing harvest? And then if you're cutting it
Yeah.
conservatively, what's the most trees per acre?
So I'll answer that to the best of my abilities. I would need a little bit of a calculator. So when I am leaving, just to kind of get this part out of the way, I'm usually measuring it with a prism, which is a forester's way to measure the basically density of the stand. But on average, I would say that we're leaving give or take 10 trees per acre,
Okay.
give or take. In some cases, it might be five, and in some cases, it might be 15 or so. And basically, the bigger the tree is, the fewer trees that we need to leave. So
Mhm.
if it's a property where it's financially feasible to leave fewer larger trees, then we don't have to leave very many. But those trees are also taking up a lot of space, generally have huge crowns. So if it's an old stand and I'm cutting it pretty aggressively, it might be five, or give or take trees per acre, 5 to 10.
Is
Is
it
there
like
a
a
certain
savanna?
basal area
Like a
you're
savanna, like? Or?
shooting for? Or?
It would look like a savanna until all the saplings come up. So if you were to maintain it with fire or mulching or something, it would basically be a savanna.
Okay.
But the basal area target we're shooting for is generally 10 to 30 square feet per
Okay,
acre. Um,
gotcha.
I'm the more I've marked, unless it's somebody who's really interested in maintaining it, as sort of early succession, I tend to want to leave fewer trees than more because once you get above about 10 to 20 square feet per acre, the regeneration tends to really be stunted because of all the shade and the water that those residual trees take up. So I try to leave fewer trees just for that purpose as much as anything, but just as long as we have enough to give the warbler some perches to defend their territories.
Gotcha. And
Hmm.
most of those leaf trees, generally speaking, are your oaks.
Yeah, it does depend on the site. We have a few applicants and properties that I've marked on that, it's a poplar stand. And if poplar is what you have, then poplar is what we'll leave.
Mm-hmm.
So, but pretty much anything, oak is the best, specifically white oak. But black cherry is one that in this part of the world, it's not particularly valued from a timber side of things, but it does host fair amount of insects with the flowers. I've left basswood trees. In a few places where there's literally nothing else, I've had to leave some pines. We don't typically leave white pine just because it's a fairly aggressive species in this part of the world without a lot of value. But if I see something like a shortleaf pine or sometimes a table mountain pine, I will leave those too. But basswood, hickory, some things like that. But yeah, just I try to keep it fairly diverse of whatever's there. But generally, the only few trees that I'm not going to leave would really be red maple. Red maple's really, or yeah, that's really the biggest no-no. And then on certain sites, black birch would be one that we're generally not trying to encourage because whether you leave them for seed or not, if it's a black birch site, you're going to be fighting the black birch if that's not your goal. So we try not to encourage it with more seed usually. So yeah, but really red maple's the only public enemy we have. So
gotcha. So black birch. You don't. So I've got some and some of my, and I didn't know this until we had Tim Flanagan on, but black birch down here is apparently super valuable for grouse. The cat.
I've never seen a black birch. You guys have been talking black birch.
I got a bunch of them.
Yeah.
I'll show them to you when you're down here.
Yeah.
So I've been in some of these stands where I'm doing non-commercial cuts. So you're saying I got some big ones that I've been kind of wrestling with. Should I cut it or should I leave it for seed production? But if it's in the stand, I shouldn't have to worry about leaving them to have a seed producer.
Honest, I love black birch. I love looking at them. I love the smell of them when you cut into them. They smell like wintergreen.
Yeah.
They're a really neat tree species, and I do love to have them around. I also don't really have anything against red maple, but it's generally just something that it is going to come back in the next stand if it's already there. Gotcha. And we just don't want to have so many of them that we're fighting to have our oaks in the stand. And
I know what. Sorry. My schism acted up there.
Catching up.
Sorry.
All good. So yeah, no, I don't doubt that they do with the buds and catkins. You know, they're one of the very few things in this part of the world that would have a catkin on it. So I mean, I'm certainly keeping them in part of the stands. Could have some value if you're really interested in ruffed grouse. But I'm certainly not saying get rid of all of them. But yeah, generally when we're thinking about the next forest, we want to focus on the oaks and having a few birch that come in. That's just fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just looked up the tree, and I've seen this tree a million times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like I just didn't know. Yeah, it's funny. It's got like river birch type bark if you use your imagination to when it's older. It's got a little bit of flake to it. That's what I'm referring to. And then it's got like young cherry bark spotted like a snake.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, more like cherry. Yeah.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
I like it. We got a bunch of it. I think I'm like you. It's pretty. I don't know. Do you know Billy Newman, Jesse?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He would always. The forestry student we have, he said, I think he told me that he's like set aside an acre just of black birch that he manages or encourages or something because he likes to chew on it, you know, for the taste. But
really,
yeah.
When we were at property, those students, they back in August or September, they were cutting birch limbs off of that one tree to bring them back to Billy. So they were having a good time with that. So
yeah.
Here's a question for you: is black birch a shrub or a tree?
Tree.
It's a tree. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Well, it's funny. Well, no, it's funny because I mean, maybe I want to show my ignorance or whatever.
Question.
Yeah, I mean,
I know. Well, truly,
anyway,
there's a lot of they're shrubs, but like a dogwood. A dogwood's a shrub, but I think of it as a tree.
It's like a small tree. Yeah.
Exactly. Like serviceberry. I've got some serviceberry that's like 25, 30 feet tall. To me, it's technically a shrub,
right.
but I'm like,
look that up because
no, black birch is definitely a tree. Though. They can get pretty big. They would be a canopy tree, whereas dogwood and serviceberry, they're not typically going to get into the canopy.
But dogwood is not a shrub. That's a tree.
It's a shrub.
It's a small tree. Yeah.
It's okay to disagree with Cody and to say that I'm right.
No, this is an enlightening that
Dogwood
I've had.
I don't know whose side.
Dogwood tree right here.
Yeah, it's a small tree, but yeah, I mean, there are dogwoods that are shrubs like gray dogwood, but no, I would, yeah. So I
It's
don't even
something
know where we went with
I'm
that. So
picking on myself because there's a lot of they're technically I think classified as shrubs. When I think of a shrub, I think of like a shrub, a blackberry or coralberry or a small shrub.
yeah, like
But by definition, there are
rhododendron or something. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
What
But
what
yeah,
we need to do, Cody, we need to hire Jesse and his wife to come out, get a babysitter for the new baby, Uncle Si, and I just would love to walk around with you, and just like to pretend I don't know anything, and go over tree species, and just talk about each tree, like so that way I would love to do that. Just go to school. I mean, I just every now and then we had John Keene on our podcast a couple weeks back, and he did that one time for me.
Oh,
I just told him, I said, I know forestry, enough to make me dangerous, but pretend I don't know anything. Just pretend, just like teach me. Oh my God. He was late to his next meeting because it was so much fun. And I just pretended I was like a little kid. Like, what's this? What's I? Why? I would love to do that with you. I know your time is going to be extra sensitive here coming
that's
out.
basically what I do when Jesse comes. I'm not sensitive of his time. I just follow him around and basically do that. Ask him all these questions and
yeah.
slow him down, get in his way, bug him.
No,
Yeah.
it's all good. Well, yeah. Sometime when I'm out there, I have a little bit of marking left to do. So no, if you're down,
Yeah.
I'd be happy to. So no, it's fun. He on that property. There's a lot of different forest types. Like you have up there on the upper half, the very moist kind of poplar area, and there's there's a few aspen trees up there, big tooth, and
Hmm.
then there's some other places where it's super dry, but they might be logged by now. So
Yeah.
be a little bit more limited in the trees that are left.
Well,
But
there's
yeah,
a lot
no,
of work to be done at Cody's. I mean, it's such a bad site, a lot of invasives. I don't even know why you're working there, to be honest with
Yeah.
you. I've never seen so much invasives and bad wood. The quality, the timber, not tight, age is bad, fungus,
Yeah.
a lot of fungus and disease.
It's an example of what not to do. That's what Rocket Shell
oh,
Ridge
man.
is, an example of
And you
what
come to
not to
my
do.
place and everything is veneer. Like every tree is a veneer tree.
All the walnut grove. Yeah.
Oh yeah, just even the maple, a lot of veneer.
Oh yeah.
All my walnut grow in old fields, not where you typically see walnuts.
Mhm.
Jesse, I don't know if it's really a question. I know it's something that you feel strongly about. It's something that we've talked a lot about. I, I can't really tee you up with a question. I'm just going to give you the floor to discuss the impact that high deer densities have
Mm.
on the health of a forest regeneration. And I'll tell you, on the Nature Conservancy property, I've been up there half a dozen times, walked I don't know how many miles at this point. I was thinking on the way back today, I heard one drumming, saw another grouse walking out. I have seen 3-to-1 grouse to deer. I have seen two
Wow.
deer. I've been up there, I think half a dozen times, and I have seen two deer. And I don't know. To me, you can't convince me that there's not a correlation between Eric and I were talking about this last night. Deer and grouse, and I hope people understand, they have coexisted beautifully for as long as God has put them on this earth. I'm not suggesting you have to have one to have the other, but in cases where I think private land, use my property for example, where it's kind of an island of relatively good habitat surrounded by poor habitat. I think there's a pretty direct correlation between high deer density and obviously an unhealthy forest. And then again, when grouse are kind of condensed to a very small island of productive habitat, I think deer can eat them out of house and home. So anyway, here's your opportunity
Yeah.
as a forester to advocate for deer management and shooting does.
Yeah. Absolutely, and I'm a huge deer hunter. I love hunting deer. I also love shooting deer, and I love advocating for other folks to shoot them. But yeah, no. So when we have too much of a good thing in the case of deer, especially west of the Blue Ridge in Virginia, where, like you've mentioned, we don't have very much young forest or um, old fields, that sort of young growth. And the deer really do, when there's a patch of young forest that gets opened up, they do tend to hammer it very
Mm-hmm.
much. And so species that we like oak, for example, and sugar maple and that sort of thing, they really uh, get eaten out by all of the deer and everything. So um, yeah, really having a handle on our deer populations so that we can get that flush of young growth and so that the trees can actually grow is really important because there are a lot of sites where the conditions might be okay for oak species to start to establish and grow, but they keep getting nipped off every year by deer so that even if you continue to improve the conditions or do a clear cut to get them the light that they need, they're probably not going to do very well because, by the time before they can get 5 feet tall, they're going to die, or get eaten. So, yeah, and that absolutely would have an impact on our rough grouse. Uh, just if they're all eaten, you can't have that stem density that you need. So that's a really big part of conversation in the forest kind of science or forestry community. I know it's a really big issue the farther north you go up into places like Pennsylvania, where they have an even higher deer density than we do here. So things that you can do beyond shooting deer, because it goes from being, putting meat on our tables and uh, time outside to becoming a job. So things that you
Mm-hmm.
can kind of do to help mitigate the impact of deer would be to increase the size of your harvest. And it sounds a little counterintuitive, but speaking of forest regeneration, which would tie in directly with grouse, but would be to make your patches pretty regular, like say a square, so that you would be reducing the amount of edge so that it takes more
Mm,
work for the deer to get to the center of that patch. So
interesting.
a 10-acre patch, say we're trying to do our forest patches and the kind of patchwork of grouse habitat. If they're 10 acres and you have a really high deer density, might not be big enough and you might not have a very good response from the trees. So,
Gotcha.
It's that's a good answer. Just like everything else, where it's like you mentioned in the beginning, where Covington there, the paper mill is a big part of, you know, very valuable to you, right?
absolutely.
Yeah, and the same thing goes to the question that Cody asked you about whitetail deer. It's just like, where do you put the product? And what I mean by that is, a lot of people, I think there is a growing trend out there that people finally realize that we kind of need to go back to QDM,
Hmm.
shooting more does and stuff like that. You see it on social media and you hear people complaining about it. When people complain about it, at least the wheels are turning, at
Yeah.
least. But again, like my wife and I, we used to eat so many deer. I mean, especially back in the day. I mean, we were broke and we're eating roadkill, God,
Spoken as a true wildlife graduate, yes.
right? Just we were eating roadkill. Is that fresh? Is that fresh? Don't eat it. Don't worry about it. Just eat it. Anyway, so, but now, I'd rather eat a ribeye, than a deer. But, Cody and his family eats a lot of deer and stuff like that. But a lot of people, I think a lot of people would shoot more deer. But again, where do you put the product? And
Hmm.
that's why I think there's so many holes to fill on this boat that has a lot of leaks. And one of the holes is, whitetail deer population. But where do
Yeah.
we like propping up, FHFH, farmers and hunters feeding the hungry? We need to prop up those type of places and nonprofits, make sure that people realize like, hey, that is a good place to put, these deer. If you can only put so much in the freezer or you're only going to eat so much.
Yeah.
And that's something there's so, again, it's like you wouldn't think of that, but we need to let people know, no, shoot more deer. And don't worry this want and waste thing. You don't, no one wants to waste it. So at least you're putting it somewhere.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
we
same thing. I just the correlation of having putting a product with timber, how valuable it is. Well, part of that puzzle is controlling whitetail deer populations, as
yeah,
we're finding out. Well, we need to find out where do you put that product at,
Hmm.
because
yeah.
you can only use so much.
Yeah, I'm not very familiar with it, but here in Virginia, I believe it's called Hunters for the Hungry.
Yeah, there you go.
And that's the donation organization for this state, I believe. So, no,
Mm,
absolutely. It's great to go out and just not necessarily worried about your target buck or whatever the trend is now, and just to go out and enjoy the outdoors, and uh, whether it's putting meat in your freezer or um, meat on somebody else's table who's less fortunate. You can do a lot of good and at the same time improve your property. And then, I mean, this isn't a deer podcast, but just from the deer's perspective, when you have the right amount of food on the ground for your deer are going to be healthier too. In theory, that should lead to bigger, healthier deer in the long run. So,
oh yeah. Hmm.
so I mean, it all ties in together, and if you manage kind of holistically, so to speak, you're gonna get a lot of really good outcomes from both the forestry side of things and wildlife management. So it's a lot of times siloed at this day and age, and we have wildlife over here and forestry over there, but they are very much intertwined.
I think especially with deer, because I think how we manage our forests is how we manage wildlife, and how we manage our deer are how we manage our forests. And it's something Eric and I talk to Eric. I don't know if he talks back to me much about it, but I talk to him about it all the time. Just the impact that deer have, because I could speak on to a lot of the properties that I'm on and that Eric and I are on together, but more specifically rocking chair back home, and it's just I'm always asking Eric how many does should I shoot, or this, that, and the other, and it's I don't think truly I don't
Not,
think we understand what's that.
never, not enough. Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
never. Yeah, we can't shoot too many, but truly, I don't think we understand how layered and nuanced high deer densities or the impact that they have on the health of a forest. Because we talk about grouse, and as you mentioned, Jesse, they inhibit hardwood generation so significantly. Well, I think that's just part of it. It exacerbates, I think is the word,
Yes.
the prevalence of invasive species, which just compounds the the negative impacts, or the negative side of an unhealthy forest. So it's just this trickle down
Oh
effect,
yeah,
and it's not the deer's fault. It's our fault for mismanaging the resource. But it's again, I wish, as we talked about early on, to paint this word picture of what a healthy forest looks like. A healthy number of deer is part of that. I would love my property, just because it's what I'm familiar with. I would love if I shot every deer that we saw, what it would look like the next year. You know what I mean? Just in terms of native browse, vegetation, hardwood regeneration.
yeah.
They do a significant amount of damage, and I don't know. I think
Yeah.
the more we manage properties, it kind of we compound the problem. I mean, you've seen our property, Jesse. Our habitat, the habitat that we have, that's actual habitat, I think is good, but we don't have a lot of it. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like those clear cuts are relatively small. We have food plots, which just sucks in more deer, which candidly makes the problem worse. Um, so I don't know. It's something I like to
Yeah.
unpack with a lot of people. There's no right or wrong answer. It's a conversation I like having with people to
Yeah.
hear their views on it.
And I feel like I should mention that the and I call it a problem, but the issue is so severe up in places like Pennsylvania that deer fencing, constructing a 10-foot
Mm,
tall fence around your forest is a relatively common practice up there. And I've seen photos and some videos of you know, the outside of the exclusion fence versus inside, and it can be like night and day. And and of course, I'm not here saying that we need to eradicate the deer or anything like that. Of
No.
course not. But really, it just is finding the balance of the deer populations compared to the food that we have on the ground. I
mhm.
think about I grew up in the Piedmont of Virginia, where there is huge forest industry, primarily loblolly pine, and the hunting culture is quite strong there as well. But I'm not saying that it doesn't exist, but you don't see the browse pressure nearly as heavily there because the forestry is so prevalent and abundant that there are still a lot of deer there, but that browse pressure is spread out on 10 times, 50 times more acreage than here west of the Blue Ridge. And I mean, a lot of that has to do with topography. It's a lot harder to manage a forest or cut timber on the side of a mountain compared to in the hills of Southside Virginia or something like that. But it isn't just deer, it is a food problem as well. I mean, if a closed canopy forest has 50 pounds of food per acre for a deer, and a deer needs a ton, 2,000 pounds of food per year to eat. I mean, it takes a lot of acres just to support a single deer.
Right.
And most of the management plans that I write, that's always something that I include because, we can do the best shelterwood harvest, establishment cut, or we can do the best shelterwood preparatory cut that, and it can look perfect, get the light conditions just right for oaks. And if there's too many deer, it's just going to sit there. And,
Hmm.
you're going to have things that you don't want come in. Maybe red maple, which is going to get hit by deer pretty heavily too. Um, but yeah, no, it's all a part of it. Yeah, as y'all can tell, I can talk about it a lot. It's certainly
Yeah.
something that gets me fired up.
For sure.
So, kind of wrapping all this up, Cody asked you a question that's really similar to what I'm about to ask you. Um, here's your opportunity to promote what you're doing. And Cody asked a similar question, but I really want to get it out of you. Like I'm an anti, or no, I'm not an anti. I'm somebody that doesn't understand what you're doing. Sell it. Like
Yeah,
sell, give it to me, man. Give it to
yeah,
us. Like why this is so important.
yeah. So the forest management is so important because all of our wildlife species are adapted for conditions that are most of our wildlife species in this part of the world are disturbance dependent from golden winged warblers to ruffed grouse, deer, turkey, your Baltimore oriole. All of these things need young growth, at least in some part of their lives. And a lot of times it's adjacent to mature forest. So it's not that we need to do all young forest, all clear cuts, but we need a diversity of age structures. And unless you want to uh, do what I've heard called thermal thinning, which is kind of a practice that is done at times where you let a wildfire or prescribed fire get really hot and torch the canopy. Cutting trees is usually the tool that we have, and it's an important thing. It drives economies in this part of the world in a lot of cases, and done well, it's extremely sustainable. It can it produces a product on top of it, and it gets the forest back into a more natural state. And of course, usually forest management needs to be combined with things like invasive species treatment. Um, it's it's difficult to do. Not many landowners do it, but also prescribe fire. It's not just the one tool, but it's many different tools in the tool bucket, so to speak, that we've been talking about, which includes deer harvest and herbicides and at many times and prescribed fire and timber harvest. Sometimes it's non-commercial uh, forestry treatments, which can be done with a chainsaw too. So it's many different things going on at the same time to mimic what was here um, before before the way it is now. So
If you don't mind me asking, how old are you? Well, I
I'm
didn't ask your
24.
weight.
No, there's an inside joke on this. If my boss watches it, he'll know. But anyway, yeah, I'm 24. So
24. How old's Noah, Cody?
27, 28.
He's probably in his latter part of 20s, right? I assume.
Mm. You guys know
I
each
tell you
other,
what,
right, Jesse? You know
yeah,
Noah. Yeah.
yeah, I know, no, great guy.
and I'm
Hmm.
sure your wife is around the same age, right? Unless you
Yeah,
you're married to a cougar that's my age. That Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's your girlfriend in the other side. So, yeah. But no, I tell you what, it's funny when we started talking about having foresters on. I was kind of my typical like, man, what is the future in forestry? Like, there is no young people up and coming, and if there is, what's their view on it? Will they stand up when someone stands up against them? Will they push back and have the right words to say? And I tell you what, not to sound corny or anything, I tell you what, between Noah, yourself, I mean, the future's good. I mean, you
Thank
guys,
you.
you're very, it's been impressive listening to you and Noah as well, and I'm sure your wife would blow both of you out of the water, right?
That is correct. Absolutely.
But no, man, it's just the biggest thing is, being an older, always have to be a dad. It's just, keep believing, have your principles, and just don't compromise anything, Don't be afraid to fight, and push back and stuff
Yeah.
within reason. Don't burn bridges and stuff. But
Yeah.
no, man, it's been impressive. Been impressive.
No, it's been a blast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, it's I feel similarly. I don't know if you and I have talked about it, Eric, but it's we haven't. John is obviously an older gentleman, but we've the people, and this is aside from the podcast, but you, Jesse, Noah, Spencer, who's been out that you worked with.
Yeah.
All you guys are much younger than I am, which is wild to say and think about. But I've kind of thought that it's everybody that I've dealt with personally, I feel good about the future. I mean, we can only control what we can control, obviously. But it's one thing that Eric and I do talk about that Eric has a lot more experience with is, foresters or forestry professionals or wildlife professionals who don't come from a hook and bullet background, which no knock to those people. They're very well intentioned, but they don't understand the decisions we're making and why, perhaps, or the reasons behind it, or the full scope of things, I guess I'm trying to say. And if I'm honest, candidly, just a little disconnected from the system. So it's something that Eric and I have talked about. It's like, if you're writing a prescription or you're drawing up a management plan, are you thinking about the rough grouse? Are you thinking about whitetail deer? Or are you just, where's your
This is
mind
what the
going?
book told me to do.
Exactly.
This is what the book told me to do.
Exactly. Yeah. And with you, Jesse, Spencer, Noah, everybody that I've met younger than I am, I have been encouraged. I'm optimistic.
Yeah. Yeah. And certainly no knock to the folks who haven't come from a hunting or fishing type of background. It really does. A lot of it is whether you're coming from a background of being outside with hunting or hiking or bird watching. It really is getting a good professional mentor and reading once you get out of college as well, really staying fresh on the research that's coming out. So yeah, no, I've met some people that didn't come from a hunting background at all and are still good, excellent professionals. So it really is very much about a mentor who knows all of the players in the game, and it really is knowing your audience, so to speak, knowing where they're coming from. So being able to relate, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Noah, Jesus. Jeez, I told you the dementia comes in and out. Jim, what's your name again, Jim?
Jesse.
I swear. Don't get old, man.
Not
That's all
the
that lead
part.
paint my mom used when she was pregnant with me. I swear. You can't take me anywhere.
Oh my gosh. You got
I don't even know what I was going to say now. Talk amongst yourself.
This one will get cut out.
This is what you signed up for. You might want to recant your offer to walk around the woods with Eric.
Oh, you can come in Jim, anytime. Yeah, anytime.
Oh, jeez. I wish I could say he's better in person. But
You let him get a drip torch?
Oh
What?
gosh. Well, yeah. Honestly, Eric, he let me down this year. He didn't make it down for burn
I
season.
know, man. Tell me about it. It
Mm,
hurts. I didn't get my fire fix at all.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, man.
yeah.
Two more
Man.
strikes, you're off the team. We talked about shrubs, kind of, and the difference between shrubs and trees. I did want to ask you, um, because the last few years, when I've kind of sunk my teeth into grouse and grouse management, you learn the importance of native shrubs. And the more people that we talk to, the more that I read, a lot of people, because I'm kind of people love to plant trees, which obviously there's a lot of value in that. I'm not a big tree planter just because there's a lot of work involved, cost, and God plants trees just fine on his own. But when it comes to planting shrubs for grouse, that's something I'm excited about doing on Rockin' Chair to supplement our cuts with some shrubs. And I'm excited about it. When the time comes, that'd probably be a next year project. But favorite native shrubs, Jesse, for wildlife or for grouse specifically. I mean, if they're good for grouse, they're good for
Yeah.
everything else. But 5
Oh
native
man.
shrubs, your favorites,
All
or
right.
maybe
So
3.
we're all right. So we're gonna go back into is it a small tree? But I'd say hawthorn
Mm-hmm.
is a great one, and that really does go on small tree native shrub. Hawthorn's a really important one, I think, in the mountains. I see that a lot as being important. Uh, I've seen golden wings using shrubs for their perch trees as well, so that's points for them. Serviceberry certainly has some potential, and I guess depending on where you are, if it's for your site, things like American plum or Chickasaw plum, those would be some of my favorites. Of course, some of that is getting more into maybe lower elevation or Piedmont species, but yeah, those would be my top three off of the top of my head.
Gotcha. It's a hard question to be asked and to answer on the spot because there are, I don't know, endemic to our region, what, 100, I would imagine,
Oh,
native shrubs.
sumac. Sumac would
Sumac.
be yeah, that would that would be in top
Smooth.
five for sure. Yeah.
Smooth. Smooth sumac.
Sm I like winged and staghorn, but they
Staghorn.
go by a lot of different names.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are two of my favorites. I've seen smooth, not very much up here in the mountains though. That's
Yeah,
at
you
least
see more smooth here than
hmm
staghorn wing. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So
I like another thing. I don't think of sumac as being this is totally a me thing. So I don't think of a sumac as being a shrub, because it's like a sapling looking thing. I don't know. This is just a
it's an odd shrub, that's for sure, and it's sent up more through root suckers than anything else. So it is kind of an odd duck in some ways,
yeah.
but yeah, no, they all serve their different purposes. I know that like thinking about thermal cover or that sort of thing, sumac wouldn't necessarily be your first choice, but it produces a lot of little seeds there that I see birds eating. So
This is a
Hmm.
late winter food source. It's
Yeah.
phenomenal. And people,
okay.
I've heard, I know in college people were making, were making Kool-Aid out of it.
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
Hmm.
yep. I tried that last year from some sumac up on the parkway, and I must have done something wrong. I did not like it.
Mm.
I would need somebody else to fix it for me who actually knows what they're doing. But I probably did something wrong with it. But yeah, no, I would totally be down to try it again.
I've never
Yeah.
even heard of that. So you make
Yeah,
Yeah.
Kool-Aid ish out
Yeah.
of sumac.
yeah,
Mm.
it's or lemonade is kind of how I've heard it described because it does have a twang to it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So mhm.
Yeah. Hmm.
Interesting.
Interesting.
Well, cool, Jesse. We'll wrap this up. There's a question we ask. If you've listened to a few of the episodes, you probably know what's coming. We end the episode with this question, and I'm curious to. I don't know if you and I have honestly talked about this, Jesse. I know you hunted grouse last fall up in Alberta, but given where you come from down the Piedmont, you're more quail background than grouse. But what is your most meaningful, your most special memory with the rough grouse?
I think I can certainly give you the first one I was able to take last year. It was actually in Saskatchewan. We were duck hunting, primarily duck and goose. And
In
a buddy of
Saskatchewan,
mine
that's
and
right.
I, we decided to drive out to an area of some public land up there that was mainly aspen forest, and we were just like, yeah, we'll walk around. Maybe we will see a grouse. We don't have dogs or anything like that, so we went out, and it was about 10 minutes to the end of legal shooting light till sunset or whatever it was, and we were gonna make one turn at a fork in the road just as one last little ditch effort. And my buddy saw a grouse feather sit like hanging from a little bramble. And so he said, "All right, well, we're going this way."
Mm-hmm.
So he walked a little bit to the left of the trail, and I was on the trail, and it got up, and we both shot at it twice, I believe. We both missed it the first time, and then the second time we each shot, it fell. We were like, all right, well, we had no idea who got the bird. And we were like, well, I'm sure we both got it, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that's what happened. So we were skinning it, and it's at a good friend of ours getting mounted right now, taxidermy. And as he was skinning it out, there was one pellet in that bird, a single pellet. So we have no idea who actually killed the bird. So I don't know if I've killed a grouse or not, actually, but but we've tried. But we gave it a good shot. And
That is awesome. That's a
anyway,
great
it
story.
was it was absolutely delicious. It was a gray phase. I think they're more common in the
Yeah, yeah,
north.
yeah. Mhm.
And yeah, so that was really special. Then I think of the first grouse I ever saw. It was my spring semester at first spring semester at Virginia Tech. I I had written a paper the semester before about a wildlife problem, or like a problem relating to wildlife for like in first year in CNRE class. And I wrote it on young forest management because of rough grouse and that sort of thing. And so I saw my first rough grouse scouting for turkeys up on a mountain in, I believe it was in Giles County.
Oh,
So
cool.
flushing that off was really special off of the top of a ridge. It was in an area that you would not expect to see a grouse either. It was closed canopy, very much just kind of scraggly chestnut oaks, but it was near some forestry work that had been done where you can pretty regularly hear grouse drumming. So those would be my two most special moments with a rough grouse. So yeah, that's what I got.
That's
That's pretty
awesome.
cool.
Awesome. Man, I tell you what, we're gonna have fun, Jesse. I had to test the
Josh,
name out again. I almost had a
go yeah, like
almost had a Noah incident there again. I didn't take my medicine. Anyway, I just quit. Never mind. No, we're gonna have fun, man. This is gonna be a start of a good relationship. You're so easy to talk to. We're gonna have fun. I can't wait to meet you, do some forestry type stuff, and learn from you. And I got a feeling you're gonna be involved whether you want to or not. You and your wife for this gift for grouse thing, man. Yeah,
yep.
I'll tell you what, Jesse, you said it when we were setting up this podcast that you'd be happy to do it in person, back
Oh
home.
yeah.
Well, something Eric and I have talked about is kind of what Eric suggested is we could just put a mic on you and we'll just wander around the woods and it would make a
yeah,
it would make a better podcast than the three of us
yeah.
sitting
Oh, you're gonna
in
have to
our
keep me on my
homes.
best behavior. Yeah.
Oh no, no, dude. It's whatever.
I mean, but truly, I learn a ton from you, Jesse, just walking and talking and looking up and explaining, like Eric said, why this tree's doing this, what species is that. One thing probably the most important thing I've learned from Jesse is to not be too specific when you're trying to identify your pine. Aside from Eastern white, Jesse said if it's short leaf, pitch, table mountain, or just call it yellow, and that's all I've been doing ever since. If it's not a
Yeah.
white pine, I just say it's a yellow pine, and I'm not wrong. I'm
Yeah.
always right.
Oh
And
my
unless
God.
you know for sure, which it takes some practice. Yeah, just calling it a yellow pine and
That's
going
like
on.
saying, hey, I saw a golden winged warbler. Oh, so you saw a dickie. A dick. It's a dickie.
Songbird. Yeah.
I saw a songbird today.
No, but I mean, it would be like saying I saw a red oak or a white oak. So it's one of those things that I guess I was probably busting your chops about calling something the wrong thing at one point. I don't know,
No,
but
I struggle with it because I knew I can tell the difference between once they mature between short leaf and Virginia. We have pitch, right?
oh yeah,
I didn't know that. So anyway,
yeah,
instead of calling a
yeah.
pitch a short leaf or vice versa, I just call it a yellow pine.
That's
Mhm.
one thing that my tree species I got down for the most part, but my pine I forget. It's
Oh
like
yeah,
going down there with
pine's
Cody. It's
tough.
like, man,
Yeah.
I hope he doesn't ask me what this is.
Well, if you're
Yeah,
you don't have too many pines up there, do you?
white, red, Austrian.
Okay, so like planted pines. Yeah. Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, thanks a lot, brother.
Yeah.
Absolutely, Jesse.
Yeah. Thank you
Absolutely.
for
We
having me.
appreciate it, man.
Yep.
We will do this again. I am positive. You
Sure.
get back to being a dad.
Yeah, I'll try to be
Yeah.
a decent husband and father for a few minutes here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Yep. Have a
Thank
good
you,
one.
Jesse.
Well, Jesse Owen, did he earn the stretch stamp of approval or no?
Man, I was touch and go there for a little bit, but no, I'm speaking for me. Dude, I am so scared. I blame it on the COVID shot, man. It's all foggy. What's my name? Did I just pee my pants? No. Dude, what an impressive young man.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to. I am very excitable. I'm an excitable boy, and so I try to be a lot, just calm down with certain people because I just he excited me. He motivated me. He's a very likable guy, and you can tell he's smart.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You can tell he's very intelligent. I can only imagine what his wife is like. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure she knows her stuff as well. But yeah, big fan, man.
Yeah.
Big fan.
I've always been impressed with Jesse. He's been out to the property multiple, maybe a dozen times or
Yeah.
more over the last year for various different things, and I've been very impressed with him as a forester, which who am I to
Yeah.
judge a forester on their work?
Yeah.
But you know what I mean, like it.
No, I know
With
what you mean. Yeah.
with a crit, I've been impressed with Jesse as a forester, but more so as a person. He has this quiet, confident demeanor about him that I appreciate and honestly, hopefully, can relate to. I have a quiet demeanor, hopefully, a confident one as well. But like I said, we had forestry students out at from the local community college for a field day last fall, and Jesse is a younger guy. He's only 24 years old. He's and new to this position and relatively new to the field. I don't know how many years he's been out of college, but it can't be but so many if he's only 24. And he was leading the group of students. I kind of observed from afar how he
Yeah.
interacted and taught, communicated, educated. That's something that we talk about is you
Mhm.
can know forestry, you can know anything. You can recite lines from a textbook, which is super. But if you can't teach it, if you can't educate, if you can't communicate or get people inspired about it, it falls on deaf ears. And Jesse, for him to be, for his age, again, just very impressed. I think he's got a bright future ahead of him in whatever career path he chooses as part of forestry. But the forests that he manages are in good hands. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I think we mentioned it. It's just, I lay in bed worrying and over psycho analyzing everything, and always worried about the future. Is it in good hands and stuff? And between Noah and Jesse, man, and we have a other guest that a Paige from Ohio. Her name is Paige. I'd love to have her on. Heather Shaw eventually. I mean, a lot of young
Mm-hmm.
people that are very passionate, they're willing to fight and give wildlife a voice the right way, management wise, and right is right and wrong is wrong. But no, it's very exciting. I just taken back from his knowledge and communicate.
Yeah.
We don't talk. That's a good point, Cody. We not to beat this because wrap it up, but you can be the smartest person in the room. That means nothing.
Yeah.
That means nothing If you are not approachable, if you don't have that thing about you that draws people in, like you just mentioned a second ago, it falls on deaf ears. And you can teach it, but you're going to want to learn it. And that is like, I always said the hardest part of my job as a consultant, the client will either know whether you know it or not. It's that first 10, 15 minutes of meeting somebody that you've never met before, giving them the full confidence in you in that short period of time. That was the most important, hardest part of my job as a consultant. Is that first 10, 15 minutes, meeting a stranger and walking away as a friend.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's good stuff. Yeah, I got a feeling we're going to be spending some time with Jesse.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, no, anything else to add?
That's all I got.
All right. Until next
humbled.
time.
Lick my wounds from my failed grouse adventure this morning. We'll get into that another day, but
yeah, another day. Yeah. Same here, man. Right?
I'll leave you with this. I told you this, and again, I'll share more at another date. Trying to film a grouse, more frustrating than hunting an old, mature whitetail buck. More frustrating than trying to turkey hunt an old gobbler. Takes a lot of that, a lot of deep breaths to try to film a rough grouse on a drumming log.
It's fighting a needle in a haystack. That's why when you see footage of somebody that has footage of grouse on a log, and we know what it took, the luck, the skill, let's call it what it is too, not being arrogant. Because you're taking a species that's, almost gone in certain places. Now, you could probably go up to Alberta and Quebec and film them all day long. I don't want to take away from that, but at the same time, it's still hard. But Ohio, Virginia, Pennsylvania, and stuff like, it's just you got to find a damn thing. Then you got to find the log, and that's not easy. And then you got to, get a blind in or whatever, how you're going to film, and then you're going to have to get there before light and just hope and pray that he didn't see you or hear you. And you're setting up, like I set up a GoPro and I got headlight on it. Like, it's just like, it's a freak thing when it does come together. We're very fortunate. We're very fortunate that we pulled it off and we've got a lot of footage.
Yeah.
But we need different birds. We've got a lot of footage of the same birds. We need something different, but that's what you're working on.
Trying to. Yeah, we're spoiled.
Yes.
And honestly, I was a little cocky because you have a bird that's pretty, over the years, has been pretty consistent and predictable. And 2 years ago when I filmed birds, first 2 mornings, I mean, it was like, just reeling them in, easy peasy. I was like, man, this is all it takes. And ever since then, God, I have been humbled. I have been struggling. Man. It's tough, but it makes you appreciate it all that much more when it does happen.
Oh, for sure. But no, everybody, appreciate you listening. Appreciate you following the Give for Grouse initiative and listening to the Give for Grouse podcast. We do enjoy doing this. Thank you for your support. Give us a 5-star, get a sticker, and don't forget about the billboard. Share your friends, and but other than that, as my grandpa always used to say, no hurry, no worry, keep moving.